everyone who's ever seen Lego Nexonites. The series, specifically. For those who loved it from the start. Or those who only started to like it around season 3. And for those who watched it but only found it a meh show. Also for those who have never watched it till the end. And even for those who found it trash. As for myself, I love Nexonites. Though love is not the perfect word for this. Because I love many series. But Nexonites is different. I don't know the exact reason, but in a blink of an eye, my whole world revolved around it. It became my comfort zone, my safe place, and also the main source of my inspiration in many ways. I have at least 7 sketchbooks filled with fan arts, over 25 MVs, counting the unpublished ones, and it's undeniably giving a CPR to my writing skills. Plus, it's also the reason why I started to read fantasies. And because of that great love, I got to know this show pretty well. Now I basically know it word for word, just like Clay the Knight's Code. Thanks to that, in the past 9 years, I formed quite a strong opinion about every little aspect of it. Some of that might be not that kind, but to my defense, most of my grievances were with me since I first saw the show at age 11. Gosh, I'm old! Anyway, aside from the many problems of this show, I always found joy in it. Like, making this video was so much fun for me. I put all my passion into that and I hope it shows in the final result. Now you know why I make this video essay. But why about the characters? Though I think its concept is quite strong in itself. What do you mean why? This is a fantasy sci-fi love child. What else do you need? So the concept should shine. But instead it dies. Yeah, they didn't really take advantage of the fantasy elements. Thus, the characters are the ones who carry the whole show on their shoulders. And they did a fine job with that. The point is, if we want to talk about Nexonites sooner or later, but rather sooner, we'll have to discuss its characters. And through them, I can cover almost everything about Nexonites. Literally. The only things I don't talk about are the ones I want to dedicate a separate essay to. And I dissect this topic through a character tier list I found back in October. Yes, I've been working on this ever since then. Of course, you may wonder if I don't have anything better to do than writing a 45-page long essay about Nexonites. And my answer is... well, I actually do, because I should study Roman law. But it can wait for now. Some important information. If it's somehow not obvious, this little thing will be full of spoilers. I'm doing my best to make everything clear, even for those who don't know the series that well. In terms of source material, I will ignore everything that would have happened in season 5, regardless from being officially confirmed. I will treat the 4 seasons as a whole, along with the episodes, the Knights of the Realm episodes, and the official books I've read, namely the Book of Monsters, the Book of Monstrax, the Knight's Code, Knights Academy, the Forbidden Power, and the 99% useless The Book of Knights. Undeniably, I only brought it because of the Murloc figure and the map. So I stick to what is said in these, with only one exception. It would be stupid to ignore the fact that Clay and Fletch are siblings. Of course, I can't do much with this information, but I still acknowledge it. And I'd like to nail something down in the very beginning. I already let go of the fact that Nexonites is just a kids show. Furthermore, I think I let this concept go right after I watched it for the first time. This just isn't perspective for me, especially because when it comes to ranking and analyzing, my one and only viewpoint is Nexonites itself. Don't worry, my overall conclusion won't be that it's perfect. But when I point out a mistake and say that it could have done better, I say it because the show already proved that it in fact can do better. Oh, and also, it's a sad fact, but sometimes viewing this as a thing for children makes the writing even worse. But still, this show could make some brilliant things, so I can't help but wonder, why couldn't they have done more brilliant things? Lastly, I won't compare it to Ninjago in any ways. Even if I would, only 2 characters worth it? But I won't. Because I think that there aren't so many fields to compare. They both Lego shows with the same goal, money, and their target audience is the same. But I don't think there are as many similarities as some people like to say. Like the Knights buying exact copies of the Ninjas thing. That's just not true. The series is similar to so many others, but Ninjago is not one of them. I mean, let's look at the story. I don't know about a soldier who subordinates everything to his principles, a rich, egoistic guy, a big and strong guy, a woman who's an excellent fighter, and an archer. I don't know if you noticed, but here I didn't list the knights. I listed the Avengers. Minus Thor. But even with that, all the knights faced way different challenges than the Avengers. Well, except maybe that one time when a witch named Wanda came. It's not hard to accuse Nexo Knights of copying. I may point out some of these similarities later on, but I still don't want to compare it to something else. And to make some justice, there's one movie, which I love. I watched it like 6 times. I even read the comic book which it's based on. But no matter how much I appreciate it in itself, I will always call Nimona a Clay Lens fanfiction. Change my mind. Moving on to the actual tier list, I want to clarify the aspects being considered. Here I have 3. My expectations for the character, the potential they have, and the overall result. This way my rating might be more objective, which is what I aim for, in theory. Does it happen in practice? I am trying to base my opinion on facts only. But I also have opinions about these facts. And if this show makes a mistake, I tend to take it as a personal attack. Like, how dare you treat my beloved show that way? But even if I'm heavily influenced by my personal opinion, at least I admit it. That's already something, isn't it? Our top tier will be the masterpiece. It says a lot, not just about the characters who go there, but my naming skills too. Looking through the series, they stand out far above the others. They are the most elaborated, and their elaboration is well made. They are the ones I'm mostly just gushing about, and I have almost 0 complaints about. Which is a big word, because I have complaints about everything. After this, we have the absolute okay category. Here go the characters who are totally okay. They are far from perfect, but at least the series tried to do something with them. In many cases, they got a thing to do. And they did it. Of course, they could have been a bit better in it, but they did it and we appreciate what we have. However, at the painfully wasted level, what we have is not enough to be appreciated. They easily could have been the gem of Nexo Knights, and for some they might be already. In fact, they all play a pretty important role in the story, and the show constantly pushes them in a better direction. But some fatal mistakes seal their fate, and therefore I can only wonder how greater they could have been. At least they were great, unlike the ones who will be placed on the could have been great but wasn't category. Well, these are the ones whom the show pushes to absolutely nowhere. They have the potential, but they don't do anything with it. They have no interest in changing or developing, or they don't even go further than the role of a side character, though they could easily. The next tier is Juice and Tools. I love the naming because wow, it has rhymes. While the previously mentioned characters at least get to do something important, they can't even do that. They help out the story with making something work, or just, well, being there without showing any sign of depth. If they occasionally get a personality, it doesn't do them anything good. They are truly nothing but tools for the story to work out the way it should. At the same time, they can be seen as a more lame versions of the absolute okay characters, because at least they're doing a decent job in being a tool. and they still have potential. The embodiments of uselessness are placed to the I forget that you existed level. It's for those who get it. Yes, that's where all the only seen once characters go. Can't really talk about them at all, and though they were great for this one-time use, after all, they are forgettable. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but that depends on the character. And here comes the worst part. I hate you. I've always hated you. Specifically because of that oversimplified scheme.
All right, you psychopath, I've been waiting years for this. I hate you. I've always hated you.
If you haven't already, you should go and check out Oversimplified. If you love history, that's why. If you don't, that's why. In my eyes, they are unforgivable. They are potentially worthless, no matter how much spotlight they get and how they're trying to be layered. No matter what they're doing, they make everything worse. They're nothing but terrible, and nothing can save them. And I'm mad at them for this in an ungodly way. Keeping all of this in mind, let's start from the bottom, of course. And the first one to go to the I hate you, I've always hated you level will be no other than Axel. Just Axel. That's right, I'm not a fan of Axel. And with that, I was pretty polite. Although I have to admit that in this case, the tier's name is not exactly accurate. Because it wasn't always that way. Back then I just didn't care about Axel at all. It only changed during the summer of 2024 when I finally got to read the Knight's Code. And I loved it. It really has that Nexonites feeling, and it's also quite interesting. It has the history of Nighton and stuff about the Knights Academy, about the campus, classes, it talks about how the Nexus powers work, and it actually makes sense, and also Lance states that his lance is bigger than Clay's sword. It's great, I swear. My favorite thing about it is how the Knights annotated every page of it. They also interacted with each other a lot. Everyone had conversation with everyone, and they captured perfectly the dynamics between them. And there was Axel. It's another thing that, thanks to some editorial bundler, they swapped the fonts for Axel and Macy. So the former's handwriting looks like a Barbie princess's, and the letter's like a Neanderthal's. It may be a bit bothering, but not the end of the world. But what wasn't just some bother is the fact that while the others covered surprisingly various topics, Axel had only 3 subjects. 1, he's big. 2, he's hungry. And 3, he's stupid. Sometimes the mix of these. And then I rewatched the show, and it could not pop my out that Axel isn't just a forgettable character. No, he's terrible, who adds nothing, I repeat, nothing to this show. Nothing proves it better than all the Axel-themed episodes in the first 3 seasons, where they try so hard to do something with Axel. And to make him look smart, which he clearly isn't, because that's what the whole show tells me, except for these 3 episodes.
Without Rance Lichman, Dance Lichstrom, you, no saving the day today.
And what a surprise! They only sting from the sweat. Maybe you think that, well, yeah, he may not be that meaningful and interesting character, but he's just a comic relief. You can't expect that much from him. Well, he's atrocious in that role too. His jokes are childish, nay, simply stupid, and also unbearably repetitive. This is quite conspicuous next to the show's actually great humor. And there's a point where his stupidity isn't stupidity anymore, just rudeness. Right now I'm talking about season 4, episode 5.
Unlike the new Clay, once I don't have to do all the heavy lifting.
Oh, he hurt us.
He hurt you. I like the new Clay, remember?
Who wrote this and why did they think that this is funny?
We could have.
Bite your tongue!
The only times you laugh because of Axel are the ones where someone makes fun of him.
You won't be in monkey pose forever. Yeah, I hope.
Or when the writers themselves make fun of the oddities around him. I have to admit, those are really funny and creative.
But, Papa, I want to be a knight. Why do you think I wear armor all the time? We had wondered about that.
Surprisingly, they managed to give him some backstory with all these his father wants him to carry on the family business thing. Though, I don't know why he needed to sing. Also, it's quite funny how his father talks about them always preferring real labor while running an inn. Hospitality is a hard job. I myself experienced it, but their village is full of miners. And then he got his father's blessing by beating up some problematic guests, which I'm pretty sure doesn't fit into the justifiable defenses category. But returning to Axel, since he's one of the main characters, he has to be present all the time, and he's spectacularly in the way all the time. Many times you can feel how he only says something for the sake of Axel saying something, because it looks stupid if he just stands in silence. And even if he actually says something important, it could easily be said by someone else and nothing would change. Another illustrative example is his relationship with the other knights, which clearly does not exist. The others' relationships with each other is easy to outline. They have conflicts, agreements, they're closer to one another, etc. When they talk to each other, it often carries weight. Lance is maybe the best example, because all his partners can react to him in a pretty intensive way, which can make some interesting scenes. With Clay, they're opposites in every possible way, except the ego. That's what causes many conflicts between them, but you can still see that they do respect each other. They're just being friends in a weird way. Missy and he have similar social status, but their attitude towards it is completely different, so in their case, that causes disagreements. And God, I wish we saw more of that than 3 scenes. Aaron is chill as always and tends to let Lance's fads slide by, but he still has his opinion.
Yeah, I'm used to Lance being, well, Lance, but this is overly Lance-ish.
This is why it's so difficult for me to hang out with peasants.
Believe me, that goes both ways, bro.
Clay is the one who, God knows how, sees actual potential in Aaron, and that will lead to appointing him the new leader. And unlike Lance, Aaron, even with all this joking around, accepts Clay as a leader and is willing to follow him. But he would never sacrifice his personality for him.
Is that us on the big screen? And is that my voice being broadcast? Awesome!
Yeah, what Aaron is trying to say is, let's all get up and cheer for King Halberd and his amazing family.
Smells like feet.
6 feet of yummy.
Aaron and Missy have this almost like siblings friendship in my eyes. They can have fun together as well as help each other if it is needed. All this without easily reading more into this. Yet they couldn't repeat this feat with Clay and Missy. Yeah, you can see them as great friends, of course, since that's what they canonically are, but I feel like sometimes even the writers and the storyboard artists forgot that fact. Either way, it's obvious that they have the closest relationship from the 5 knights. And how does Axel fit to that picture? No way. He has naturally good relationship with everyone, and it doesn't help him to be more interesting. On the top of that, nothing happens to him. Apart from the 3 episodes dedicated to him, of course. But even then, he only has to do something and doesn't develop at all. Oh, sorry, I must not forget that he actually has a change in character at the end of season 4 when the Colossus eats him. First, that's way too late. And honestly, in connection with this, I can only think of the fact that how shocked the others were when he escaped.
How did you get out of that thing?
I don't want to talk about it.
You were swallowed whole. How did you get out?
that tells me that they thought it was impossible to get out and they peacefully accepted the fact that they will never see him again. Just like me. But I can't even say that he's a hopeless case. There are similar cartoon characters who worked and whom I actually like. Based on this, the problem is Axel, and now I hate him enough to not even want to look at him again. There's a chance that I'm biased, sure. Maybe there is some good in Axel. Maybe I'm bounded by the hatred. However, I noticed something. Even at age 12, I couldn't help but notice that in season 3, there were 3 times where Axel got abstracted and couldn't do anything. 3 from 10 episodes. That's almost 1/3 of the season. Which tells me that even the writers were looking for exceptions to not have to do something with him. But that's just my theory. I have to admit it's likely not true. But it's still interesting. If that can be considered an unpopular opinion, what should the next chapter be called? Because our next character is Dumbledore! I mean Murloc. I've read the whole Harry Potter series more than 5 times in the past 8 years. During this time, I found plenty of reasons why to not like Dumbledore. So if I say that Murloc is way worse than him, that should tell you something. There are a lot of parallels and similarities between them, but if I try to list them all, we would be here all day. Not to mention the fact that this is not only part of Nexonites, which eerily resembles to Harry Potter. So no more Dumbledore analogy. And we don't even have to talk about Murloc on a deep level yet. Let's just take a look at his position in the series. Well, that's easy. He's an exposition machine. He stands, does nothing, and if their story requires so, says something really important which had not occurred to him until then. Since everything comes to his mind way too late, the knights are always the passive ones in the story. They always just react to what Jestro and Monstrax do.
Eureka! I've got it! Jestro is after that snow globe on Marge's desk at the Academy!
It undermines the story on the most basic levels and does more harm than good. Because, yeah, it's good since kids respond well to the trope. I can't argue with the fact that this is an authoritative point. Unfortunately, Murloc performs pretty poorly in the role of the old and wise man too. It's really difficult to recall times when his advice brought the story forward or helped the character's development. Because of that, his fundamentally important character becomes a hump on the back. Another problem is that they start off by declaring many times how he is the greatest wizard of all time and how he saved everyone from the evil. Then he faces a handful of jerkwater monsters and instantly pops off. It doesn't make it easier to take him seriously. His great powers are nothing but inconvenience to the story. When clay started to turn into stone, the strongest magician couldn't do anything. With that, it's really obvious how the writers didn't want to show his magic using in practice. So his curing clay project looks like me when I have to study. I swear, I'm studying. I'm doing it all the time. I know you haven't seen a book in my hand in weeks, but I swear, I'm studying. At this point, Nexa powers or not, everyone would be better off if Murloc's only line would be, do whatever you want, I'm super dead! But even when he was alive, he produced contradictions on an assembly line. Like, Clay grew up next to him. He was his friend. Based on the Knights of the Realm episodes, we can be quite sure that he's been in his library too. How could it happen that he never saw the Book of Monsters? Or without that, you dare to tell me that a curious child would have missed the chance to ask the great Murloc himself about how he defeated Monstrax? They being close to each other is so pointless, and it just makes things worse, since we never saw anything that would imply that. If they don't tell me in Season 1, Episode 1 that Clay is Murloc's little favorite, I'd never guessed it. The point is, if we want to look for the reason of the instability of the unstable base story, Murloc is an undeniable aspect. On the other hand, without Murloc, we wouldn't even have a story, since every bad thing happens thanks to him. I wouldn't be surprised if he would be the reason why Monstrax became evil. Okay, that's really exaggerating, but helps to emphasize that the series of Murloc's mistakes are generating every conflict. He decided to keep Monstrax alive, he made Jester a Jester, not to mention the fact that he decided to turn Wanda into stone, and with that, literally killed her. Why would he do that? Because that means he was willing to spare the life of a threatening evil wizard, but not his own sister, who wasn't even evil by her choice. Or probably not, because the series is unable to take a position on that issue. My favorite thing about that is what Murloc says about the spell that starts to turn Clay into stone too. That's a dark, dark magic, which he hasn't seen in a long time. When was that? Oh yeah, when he used it on his little sister, who's Clay's mother, by the way. And that takes to the last scene of his, hiding everything from Clay. I can't even understand how could he carry it out. Of course, the show doesn't need to explain anything. There's no magic system, and we have no idea how wizards work, especially since we only have 4 in the story. How convenient. And from these 4, Murloc is the least unusable, which says a lot. We have Monstrax, who doesn't function not only as a wizard, but also as a human being, and Wanda, who has so many problems they could dam the Danube. And lastly, we have Clay, who only spent like 10 minutes actually using magic, and within that short time he managed to laugh at the face of that really minimal amount of rules of sorcery that Nexonites laid down. So yeah, with the lack of rules, it's not hard to believe that his whole "I will hide from you the fact that you're a wizard" plan could actually work out. Who knows, maybe Clay could have lived a happy life without ever getting to know the truth. But I still have my doubts. For example, aren't Murloc like 400 plus years old? I assume his sister isn't under 100 too. So I guess wizards live a longer life. I can picture Clay blowing away like 120 candles on his cake and then saying that this is a little suspicious. And excuse me, but there's Fletcher, who uses magic pretty actively without ever being told about his powers. Maybe season 3 could have given us some clue, but no. Why would they give us a hint about Clay's heritage or Murloc being related to him? Maybe if they would have a scene where Clay faces his mother, or Wanda would have appeared in Murloc's memory. Without that, what do I want? And in the first 2 seasons, it's not even worth looking for any hint, because I'm pretty sure that they had nothing figured out back then. Though, some fan who's sensitive to mythical connections could point out that they both have this weird thing for not destroying obviously dangerous magical objects, and the Snottingham flu causes hallucinations to both.
And when did everyone decide to become so ham-hocky?
Huh?
Oh, am I a ham-hock too? I should have been consulted.
Oh, I got the Snottingham cold once. I hallucinated so much I thought I was a beautiful griffin flying through ice cream pie clouds.
But I'm not such a fan who's sensitive to mythical connections, so I won't say anything. Though Chelsea is the only legitimate king in the universe. But alright. I'll accept that Murloc's great "I'll keep everything in secret" plan was a completely feasible idea. Let's talk about his justification.
I was fearful that a tendency towards evil might run in his veins too, which I never told you about so you wouldn't develop it. But now that it is active, I fear the magic is turning you evil.
Taste what we've just heard and fill out with what we know. Murloc says Clay inherited his tendency towards evil from his mother. So she was turned evil by that said tendency? Or, like Murloc said,
was turned evil by the dark side of her magical impulses.
Oh, wait, nope. He also said,
Monstrux's presence started to turn her sinister.
yep, the series, alongside with the Book of Monstrux, claims that Monstrux turned all the wizards and witches evil by the forbidden powers. So, dark side of magic, evil tendency, forbidden powers, we have a wide selection here. Not to mention Fletcher. Poor boy, everything about him is a plot hole. He's jittering about his magic turning him evil just by itself, like some weird side effect. Here's my idea. No one knows what makes the wizards evil. That's actually a great concept. At the end of the day, all of these qualifies the world building's quality more than Murloc himself. But the bare facts are that none of these made any sense. He didn't even play the I forgot card, and later on the show refutes itself just so Murloc doesn't have a good reason. I detail it in Clay's segment since I also consider this a mistake in relation to him. But don't worry, it's not hard to keep throwing Barbarocks at him. Because at the end of season 4 we get to know that Clay's magic is powerful enough to break Monstrux's spell, which turned him to stone. So let me ask politely, couldn't he have been spared from all the fuss? I know we needed the evil Clay, of course we needed, or maybe not, but for once couldn't they have implemented it in a way that Murloc didn't seem like a last-ditch piece of trash? Because after all of these, I could easily say that he's the real villain of the story. But examining more calmly, I say that he is a human, like all of us, who makes mistakes. Sounds great, right? No. Because the show doesn't dare to look at him that way. And he doesn't look at himself that way either. Well, at least this fits into his character. He was never held accountable for his actions, for his mistakes. Did the king know that the evilest wizard of all times is chilling on a bookshelf in his castle? They really let Murloc decide alone what will be the punishment for every evil wizard. What has he done? Turned everyone into a stone statue like his sister? Poor girl, no one knew she ever existed. Murloc has a sister? No way, we would have heard about her. He did not tell Clay about the truth because he would have turned evil. No, he just simply knew how would he react when he learns that Murloc killed his mother. Oh, how could we forget? He hid everything from Clay. And when he admits it, what he gets? A bit of scolding, like, that was not cool, bro. That's all. I know I said no more Dumbledore analogy, but I have to highlight this one. Both characters can only become unsympathetic in the consumer's reading. Both Harry Potter and Nexonites will do everything to show them off in a good light. But one does not have to be good to not be bad. Murloc could be a way better character if the show would admit it. Spoiler, regarding to the Grey Knight, they did it. To sum it all up, Murloc's role in the story derails the plot, and every second action he takes only generates further contradictions. In addition, he is constantly portrayed as a good person while his actions prove the exact opposite. He has no character development, and his personality is a copy-paste of an iconic character.
I'm still going over the bug reports, but he's his normal, crotchety self.
Crotchety? When am I ever crotchety? I am perhaps at times magically grumpy, but that's a different matter. And then we climbed Mount Hazard to fight the Ice Dragon, which turned out to be a billy goat. It was named by Jebediah Hazard, who fell down a lot and thought it was really dangerous, but it wasn't really. Which reminds me...
Murloc, please!
And if it ever comes out that Clay named his son after Murloc, I won't stand for myself.
Boogie woogie, boogie woogie, boogie woogie.
Yeah, these two might be a bit controversial. At least the next one won't be. Here comes Jestro the Evil, number 2. Well, that was really unnecessary. It was the laziest decision possible to bring him back as a villain, especially after the great arc what he had in season 2. And let's face the facts. He wasn't even a good bad guy in the first 2 seasons. At least the writers noticed that too, so they changed him a little bit. Namely, they give him a spine. A Second edition, they polished Monster's personality too, and voila! We got a fun evil duo. I have to admit that they were in fact funny in seasons 3 and 4. But for that, they had to lose their original charm. Yeah, there's no trace of their previous masterfully crafted manipulator relationship. Instead we have this. Which is, like I said, was funny, but was it necessary? Nope. For some jokes, they ruined Jastro's whole character. Because, yeah, they ruined it, and it's just a mild expression. There was maybe one scene where it seemed like they give a damn about Jastro's past. He had this weak moment in season 3, episode 2, where he realized that he misses his old life. That's all, and he moved on pretty fast. Just like the Knights. They didn't make much fuss about it. Even less than in season 1, which is a big word. Clay said a sentence about it, and that's it.
I can only believe that Monstrux did something to him.
They haven't done anything about that. And in season 4, even the writers forgot what happened to him. It is set as Monstrux manipulates Jastro, just like he did in season 1 and 2.
You hear that? He lives to serve me! You don't even say stuff like that.
That's because there's always a question about who's serving who with you around. Hey, okay, don't rush me. I'm in charge here, remember?
For now.
But he's not! He made it very clear in season 3, episode 1, that he only needs Jastro because he has hands.
It wasn't a dream?
No, it wasn't, Clown Boy. But you're gonna help me realize my dreams. And I need you to be my man on the ground.
So when Rowena said to Jastro that
you've accepted well your secondary role to the Colossus of Monstrux.
I just blinked, like, excuse me? Who said ever that he won't get the secondary role? And on the top of that, after the defeat of the Colossus, he received a much more severe punishment than after season 2. And you can't even say that this was those evil knights' fault. No, because even Jastro sees himself as guilty.
You had just as much to do with this mess as I did.
So they treated him terribly in that respect too. All because he and Monstrux had a great dynamic. But they changed it completely here, so why wouldn't they just found someone other for that job? Since the personality change, it wouldn't matter anyway. But no, rather just ruin his whole development. Great job! But at least we can be sure that season 5 and 6 would have treated him much better.
That would be it. That would be a story arc with Jastro as a hero on the Nexo Knights team, and then he's back in the fold with the Book of Monsters in whatever form he is.
Or not. And now, the rock bottom. Rowena Stoneheart. I have one itty-bitty question. How? How could they ruin her that much? It's just shocking that she was executed that poorly. Especially since if you just list stuff about her, it sounds quite promising. Like, 1, she's Merlock's sister. 2, she's Clayton Fletcher's mother. 3, she's an evil witch, based on what has been said, quite strong. 4, she was turned into stone by his own brother. Looking through all of this, it's easy to see how much potential she has. Or at least it can be said that with all these different aspects of her, it's impossible to mess it all up. And to that, this woman replied, "Hold my beer." I wish I'd be kidding, but I'm serious, like appendicitis. I can't say anything positive about her. The pinnacle of her career was in season 4, episode 9, where she punched Axel into the Colossus' mouth, but that didn't add anything to her character either. So, where should I start? Maybe at the beginning, aka season 3, episode 9. I think I should tell you that, till the recent past, I had the theory that the story of season 4 was vetted out under 5 minutes. But I was wrong. The facts refuted me. Because the Book of Monstrux and the Knights Academy Forbidden Power was published at the same time as season 3 aired. Knowing that, we can be almost sure that the story of season 4 was already at least outlined, which makes matters even worse, because that means they had almost certainly figured out everything And yet they choose not to show anything about that. While it's clear that if they want, they can hint at things very effectively. So, unless you read the book diligently, you had no idea who she is. We saw a little bit of her in Merlock's memory, but that didn't tell us anything about her personality or her relationship with Merlock. And they totally forget about that scene later, and we never get to know how it ended. And after she gets revived, they tell us that she's really, really evil. She kidnaps the queen and she acts really, really evil and all, but nothing more. There are no signs of her being more than a monster of the week. But then she faces Clay and nothing. I would like to emphasize again. At this point, the whole chaotic Mornington family was figured out. Almost certainly. Nevertheless, you can't really say from Ruina's face that she just met her son. I'd settle for one cut with her having a shocked expression. For anything. Imagine how cool this scene would be with that strange feeling vibrating in the air, implying there's something more here. You know, like in every second episode of Season 4. In support of this, maybe they could have said in Season 3 that, fun fact, Clay is an orphan and knows nothing about his family. Because yeah, this was never said once in 28 episodes. If you want to know stuff like that, read the books or download the app for the special episodes. I can't believe they did this whole I am your mother thing without making it clear that Clay doesn't know his mother. Where did I learn that? Oh yeah, at the same time I got to know who his mother is. It's so sad that the series fall in the basic levels of writings. Don't take it evident that I consume every book and special episode, please! What makes this especially ridiculous is that even Tommy Andreessen acknowledges the fact that most of the fandom haven't seen the Knights of the Realm episodes. But moving on from that, why didn't they hint at Merlock concealing something? Or simply telling us that this woman, well, exists? There are scenes showing the Wizard's Council. Was it really hard to put her on that picture? And nope, I'm not willing to believe that the Green Lady was her. Something small would have been enough to get this aha experience that we can expect great things here. Instead of this, the series makes things even harder for the poor viewers with misleading things like,
she looks like she's been petrified for a long time. Is she the right one for the job?
yeah, this show doesn't give you the impression that she's been a statue for decades or like 100 years. But was she? No way. Though Nexize doesn't really like to throw with the numbers, I know plenty enough to do a little math. So what do we have? The Knights Academy is for 4 years, and the Knights graduating in Season 1, Episode 1. And it is implied that between Season 1 and Season 3, Episode 1, 1 year passed. So it's been 5 years since they started the Academy. And that's when Fletch started. So there's a 5-year age gap between him and Clay. We know that Fletch became an orphan as a baby, which according to Google and common sense means maximum 1 year. So Clay was around 6 years old when Ruina turned to stone. It took 5 years to Merlock to find him, and then he started to study in the Knights Academy at age 11. So Fletch is 11 too now, which means the Knights are in Seasons 3 and 4. Or 16. Jesus Christ, that's terrible. I must admit that 1920 sounds much better. What a shame that math isn't mathing that way. The point is, Ruina's statue should be kind of fresh next to all the 100 years old monsters, since 11 years ago she gave birth to his son. That's not something you can do petrified. Moving on, yeah, the series doesn't try very hard to portray her as a loving mother, thank God, but this should have caught her off guard. There's Clay, who's willing to fight till his last breath. Literally, he gives it his all to rescue the queen, and Ruina, she's been a statue for years. During this time, his son grew up, became a knight, and he has no idea who he really is or who is she. This could have been a heartbreaking scene too. And if we're already talking about missing reactions, Merlock was in no hurry to get scared either. although his evil sister is alive again and she can tell everything to Clay at any time. What a pile of missed opportunities. And we don't hear from Rui now for the rest of the season. Why would we? Maybe we'd know that she's actually important. That one episode she was in definitely did not tell us that. And it didn't give her any personality.
A művészet fájdalmas! Életre kell keltened a kőköpőkoptere!
Unfortunately, season 4 stubbornly stuck to that zero personality thing, which made things a bit complicated because at this point they had to show us that she matters. And the result is terrible. Because they put her next to Jethro and Monstrax in every scene with an evil smile on her face telling us that, look, she's on screen next to Jethro, so she's important. How brilliant. Oh, and she did lots of evil laughs. In an embarrassing amount. At least the writers knew that too. At one point in season 4, episode 7, they make a joke out of the fact that this woman can't do anything but laughing evilly. At least they are aware. So she's not a masterpiece in that field either. But that's not important. The real deal is the fact that she's Clay's mother. First of all, I'd like to outrage a bit more about the fact that she never exactly reacts to, well, Clay. In season 4, episode 2, they have no scenes together. Probably to avoid the awkwardness. And then in season 4, episode 4, she already keeps everything under control. She even knows that Clay doesn't remember her because of Murloc. I wonder how she's that well informed. Probably knows his brother well enough to accept something like that. About that, another missing point was the fact that Monstrax knows that Wanda is Murloc's sister, although he doesn't show it here. But it's a big deal, like it should have been a below-the-belt punch for Murloc. Ignoring all of these, she starts to play with Clay's mind with a big success. The Grey Knight even plays into her hands with his distorted personality. But the poor viewer has no idea why she does that in the first place. And I believe there's no answer to that. If she could just show some emotions, it'd be really make everything easier. If you decide to switch up the typical evil death trope, do something with it. A mother's role in one's life is so much different than a father's. It creates such a strong bond that cannot be ignored. Or, if you ignore it, have a reason. Let's admit, there are myriads of bad mothers with myriads of reasons behind it. So, okay, Rowena is an awful mother. But why? No, I won't accept the because she turned evil excuse. At this point, it's useless. There were points where the Grey Knight restrained himself and Jethro had his weak moment too. Gosh, even Monstrax couldn't just turn against his own creations. And it's not rocket science to come up with a reason for being a terrible mother. Maybe she sees his brother in Clay, or she has regrets about him or his father and she projects this onto him. Or she's not happy with his decision to become a knight because a matter of principle, bad memories, prejudice, anything. With just this, we could have learned more about her and her past. Heaven forbids, she may get a personality too. A little tenderness in her, at least towards Clay, is needed anyway because now she's sprinting at lightning speed towards the worst outcome possible, which is that she's a horrible parent the whole time who shows no love towards her children, and after the final they give her a crappy excuse to see her as a good person and a good mother, and she won't be punished for her actions in any way, which is an outcome that should be avoided at all costs. Yes, I'm looking at you right now, miraculous ladybug! Of course, who knows, maybe she would act like a good person at some point during season 5 or 6. It would probably happen. And probably the fact that she's been turned evil would make a great excuse to make her all goodness under a minute. What a practical solution so that there's no complexity in her by any chance. Or if somehow she wouldn't change with a snap, it wouldn't have any basis and wouldn't fit into her character. Because who reveals her identity to her son in such a cruel way clearly has her EQ in minus. I'd say that there's more love in a pile of rocks than in her, but she's a pile of rocks too, so I guess there's no deeper point than her. She really did everything to make this for Clay the most painful as possible. What a surprise, she actually had a reason for that. That's how she wanted to withdraw him from his circulation. And at this point, it's obvious that this woman is just evil. She attacked his son in season 4, episode 10 with a deadly calm too. Her frustrated face there. That was personal. Overall, it can be said that she's the worst character in this whole series, without a doubt. The time spent with her writing converges with zero in my opinion, because copying Bellatrix Lestrange shouldn't take that much time. God, they even share the same hairpiece. And if we talk about her design... In general, I have no problem with the character designs in Nexonites. On the contrary, I think most of them turned out pretty great. The color palettes, the armors, the details like Jastro's head following his emotions. My personal favorite, probably the King and Queen. Their outfits complement each other perfectly, just like their personalities. And just like in the whole world, the hexagon is a recurring motif on clothes too. And it wonderfully connects all the characters from the nobles to the peasants. You put them next to each other and it's clear that they are from the same world. So yeah, the designs are good. Of course, Rowena got to be out of line here too. Because this dress, I just hate it. It's ugly and uncreative, especially compared to the others. And on the top of that, it makes no sense. If that's not obvious at first glance, try to draw it without looking stupid. I tortured myself with it for like 8 years. Is anyone wondering why Rowena isn't the tip of my heart? Moreover, whenever they tell an information about her, it instantly generates a contradiction. Let's talk about Wanda. And no, I'm not willing to accept the fact that her canon name is Wanda Morrington. It only exists, so Merlock doesn't have to say it out loud that she is Clay's mother, and everyone can figure it out themselves. But if we use our little grey cells, we can quickly realize that Wanda's surname is in itself a big plot hole, because we have two options. The first is that she took her husband's name, and the second is that it's her maiden name. In the case of the former, we can instantly presume that Merlock knew about Clay's father too. Which is weird since at least 80 years have passed between Wanda becoming evil and Clay being born, and within that time Merlock hasn't been in contact with her. He only found out Clay's existence 5 years later, and he didn't even know about Fletcher. So that scenario is pretty unlikely. So the worst case remains that it's her maiden name, which also means that Merlock's name is also Morrington. Could someone explain to me how did no one notice that the most famous wizard of the land and that random orphan kid share the same surname? I'm patiently waiting for the answers. So yeah, no matter how we look at it, Wanda's name only causes trouble. And while we're at it, her timeline is a bigger mess than my desk. 100 years ago, she became evil, had a big fight with Merlock, ran away. Who knows what she did for like a half century, then got together with some random guy, give him 2 children, and we don't even know what happened to the guy, but she decided to separate her children and give them in 2 different orphanages, one with his full name, family crest, etc., and one with a lame pseudonym. Then she continues the being evil thing exactly where she left off for the duration of a maternity leave, meets with his bro, who turns her into stone without thinking. There's no casual relationship, no logic in her actions. There's no need to spread all the cards, but at least it could be guessed why certain things happened. We had a perfect time and place for that in season 4, episode 7, when Rowena revealed who she is. It take like one sentence, something like, I had to left you because of that and that, but now you have to know the truth. Simple, right? But for that you should have a clear plan, which existence I highly doubt. I still can't say anything but that season 4 should have made time for Rowena's story, because even though she has pretty high screen time, we know nothing about her. It doesn't have to be a backstory. It would have been enough if she had a relationship with her family. Her relationship with Clay makes no sense. I think I demonstrated it pretty well, but what about Murloc? Well, that's even worse. Their Baying siblings adds nothing to the series, except Murloc being Clay's uncle. At least we can see the care there. Or something that's supposed to be care? But there's nothing between Wanda and Murloc. They don't even face each other eye to eye. If they talk about each other, it has no personal aspects, although it's so easy to compress complex feelings and grievances into a sibling relationship. Something like that could explain why she stands by Monstrax against his brother. At first glance, it seems like we know exactly the reason behind that. Actually, we have too much reasons. The show gives us like 4 different explanations. But in the end, it turns out that we still don't know why she's evil, since Clay says,
I will find her. I have to know how she became who she is. I have to know why.
Controversial like everything in connection with Wanda. As an ending, I like to talk about the stronghold of contradictions, the white stone statue, as some sort of fun fact. It has not 1, but 2 official descriptions, which is a lot compared to the fact that it wasn't even featured in the series. The first and more likely description says it's the statue of the queen that Arnoldi made. Pretty believable. And the second. In a garden once stood the statue of a beautiful woman named Wanda. It was made by Murloc, not through chiseling or carving like Arnoldi thought, but with powerful and desperate magic spell that turned a real living person into a statue. What? How? Who? You may ask. All will be revealed in due time. It summarizes Wanda perfectly, and this is a great heartache for me. Her character really had so much potential, and I always find the basic idea quite appealing. No wonder why her backstory was the one what made me start my first ever animatic, which will be finished someday, I swear. For the sake of order, I must say something about both Murloc, Jestro, the Evil, Number 2, and Wanda. And that's the fact that these highlighted paradoxes are not new to me. I didn't just decide to watch Nexonites at age 19 and strain at a gnat. No, I noticed these the first time I watched the show, and that's why I found these especially infuriating. Cause yeah, the more older you are, the more easier it gets to find stupid mistakes in stories made for children. But if your target audience, of which I was actually a member back then, can see it and finds it disturbing, that should be recorded as a failure. Okay, I'm not sure about who else was annoyed by this, but I was for sure. I was invested in this series. I paid attention to every little detail, made theories while watching. Thinking about it, that was the first and last time I cared about a series that much. For the first watch, at least. And I don't think that expecting a children's show to make sense is a big thing. How could it happen that they turned tables up for some stupid clown hats, but made season 4 a complete mess? It contradicts itself every second, there's no coherence in the story, and it seems like it leads to nothing. And they broke all of their rules, although, as I heard, children need clear rules to play by. Covering up with Nexonites being made for children just makes everything even worse here. And it's sad, because I remember finishing season 4 with 2 thoughts. 1, I love it! And 2, well, that made 0 sense to me. So I consider the mistakes to be drastic in this regard. Moving on, we find an unexpected trio. The Harpies. They're not just bad, or forgettable, or useless. Pardon, they are, but there's more. They have a scene which they committed hand in hand with Rowena. And that's being terrible female characters. Female villains, to be exact. All they do is evil maniac laughs with these wacky, crazy psychopath vibes. And that's just painful to watch. Especially if you put these four together, like in Season 3, Episode 9. Seriously, how did they get here after Lavaria and Viparella? They weren't perfect, but they actually had personality. And brain, I might add. After them, they could have done much better with the Harpies. And tell me, why isn't there a single male villain in Nexonites who doesn't do anything but laughing evilly? I'm waiting for the answers. My next patient will be the Axel family. There's no way I'm gonna talk about them one by one. And yeah, I have to admit, they're the victim of my hatred towards Axel. Without that, they could be... I forgot that you existed, probably. Their performance as Axel's family... Okay, I guess they had this story with trying to be fancy, and the parents actually proved that they can do something smart in Season 3, Episode 6.
Folks been disappearing around Diggington. Just some at first, then it got real bad. Ma and Pa decided to lead a search party.
Well, that's very civic-minded of them.
Yep. All the missing customers were hurting business.
But their existence is unneeded, in my opinion. Imagine if they would have spent the time with Aaron's family, or get to know how Clay's village, Denali, looks like, what the villagers think about him. There's one interesting thing about them, which is the fact that their ancestors were dwarves. That's why they're small. And that means that there were in fact dwarves in Nighton. That's actually a cool thing. And where they said it? In the Book of Nights. In that boring, useless piece of marketing material. Oh, and Brian Damond has all my respect for his voice acting performance here. What else could I say about them? They don't have any personality, we don't see how they affect Axel's behavior. Last and least, a surprise guest.
Shields. Jack Shields.
He seems random, I know, but I have my reasons. I highly doubt that Season 4 is the best of Nexonites, but it has many strong episodes and a definitely interesting story. And yet, it managed to produce my two most hated episodes. The worst episode ever is Season 4, Episode 1, by far. Back in the 1600s, it could have been used for tortures. And the other one is Season 4, Episode 4. That's when Stoneclay is sent to spy on Jethro and Monstrax, and for that he needed an extremely useful and comprehensive training. I'm angry about this episode for several reasons. For example, the fact that the spies do exist in this world. There's no sign of government agencies. We have no idea what the king does. The law enforcement officers are just side notes in a parenthetical sentence, but spies they do have. Why? I may ask, why? Who are they spying on? And if they are spies, I beg you, make them spy, not fight. Until that point, fighting monsters was Nexonite's privilege. It was within their jurisdiction. Why did they have to say that spies take part in that too? Totally independently, I might add. And how, I ask politely, because they certainly don't have nexopowers. I think we all agree on that. And that's just one thing from the many. But most of them has nothing to do with Jack Shields, so I won't talk about them now, at least. I have great plans. For now, we must be content with the fact that the spies here are unnecessary and pointless. Oh, you say that this was because Clay needed to infiltrate the monsters? Well, that won't happen, since I'd be very happy to introduce this whole concept to defenestration. And I found Jack Shields nerve-wracking. No, I haven't seen any James Bond film. No, I don't know how could that happen. I will fix this problem someday. But Jack Seals didn't take me off my feet. The only good thing about him is Clay's reactions to him, which perfectly mirrors mine too. If I want to see a meddler, arrogant spy, I choose
Terrence Myers.
It's a matter of
National security, yes.
This is a sign for you to watch Murdoch Mysteries. Yep, I am biased, I admit it, but he represents every problem in this episode, so yeah, he'll stay on the bottom. And that was the first tier. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. The next part is already on its way, and it will cover the next 3 tiers. I forgot that you existed. Juice and tools, and could have been great, but wasn't. Get ready for more of my exotic Next Night opinions and English. Until we meet again!